She dismissed the vendor, mocked the booth. But when she realized who she was talking to, even her designer sunglasses couldn't hide the shame. It was a warm, breezy afternoon at the downtown artisan market, the kind that made the air feel soft and alive. The sky stretched in a pale blue dome overhead, with a few lazy clouds drifting by like wandering thoughts. Sunlight filtered through the colorful vendor tents, casting patchy shadows that danced on the pavement. The aroma of roasted coffee beans mingled with the faint scent of lavender soaps and beeswax candles. The market buzzed with the gentle murmur footsteps, casual chatter, and the occasional sound of laughter carried on the wind. Beneath one of the simpler tents, tucked toward the edge of the vendor row, knelt Tasha, soft-spoken woman in her mid-30s, with skin the color of rich mahogany and eyes that held both weariness and quiet fire. Her booth was humble, almost understated, compared to the brighter, flashier displays around her. A folding table covered in black velvet held her handmade jewelry, delicate earrings strung with glass beads, wire-wrapped pendants that shimmered in the sun, and bracelets woven with fine threads and patient fingers. Tasha wore a faded gray cardigan over a worn t-shirt, her jeans slightly frayed at the knees. Her sneakers had seen better days, scuffed at the toes and dirt-streaked from long walks and early mornings. But none of that seemed to matter as she worked. There was a grace to her movements, a quiet precision. Her fingers, calloused from years of crafting, moved with a kind of reverence, lifting each piece, turning it in the light, arranging it just so on the velvet-like setting tiny stars into the sky. Beside her stood Maya, her 10-year-old daughter, slender and bright-eyed, with her mother's high cheekbones and her father's stubborn chin. Maya was wearing a yellow hoodie 2 sizes too big, the sleeves bunching at her wrists as she held out a necklace toward her mother. It was a simple strand coiled beads threaded with polished wooden discs, but Maya offered it with the kind of care usually reserved for rare treasure. Tasha took it gently, brushing her fingers over her daughter's knuckles for a brief, silent moment of thanks. No words were needed. There was an ease between them, a rhythm honed over countless afternoons just like this. Together, they worked like 2 parts of the same soul, one heart, 2 hands. The market hadn't officially opened yet, but a few early wanderers had begun to drift past, casting glances at the tables. Maya's eyes tracked them eagerly. She always hoped for the first sale of the day to come early, to lift her mother's spirits. Sales meant groceries. Sales meant rent. Sales meant maybe, just maybe, saving enough to keep the heat on this winter. But, for now, Maya kept her smile wide and her hands ready, passing pieces to her mother with the devotion of a squire preparing a knight for battle. "Mom," she said softly, not wanting to interrupt but needing to speak, "do you think the blue one will sell today?" Tasha glanced down at the necklace Maya had helped make last week, the one with the deep sapphire glass beads and the tiny silver charm in the center. "It just might," she said, a quiet smile touching the corner of her lips. "It's special, like you." Maya beamed, her chest swelling with pride. Around them, the noise of the market grew, more footsteps, more voices, the clatter of folding chairs. Somewhere nearby, a musician was warming up on a battered guitar, plucking soft notes that wove through the air like threads. Tasha stood slowly, her knees cracking with the effort. She winced just a little, but she didn't let Maya see. There were things a mother learned to carry in silence, struggles too heavy for a child to bear. She scanned the booth one last time, smoothing a corner of the velvet, adjusting a pair of copper earrings to catch the sunlight. Everything was in place. It wasn't a grand setup, no banners, no flashy lights, no clever signs, just her work, laid out with honesty and hope. And still, in that moment, with her daughter at her side and the afternoon unfolding around them like a prayer, Tasha felt something close to peace. Not comfort, exactly life, rarely allowed for that, but purpose, grounding, the knowledge that what she was doing, though small, mattered, that every piece of jewelry was a whisper of her story, that each clasp, each bead, each wire twist was a reminder. They were still here, still trying, still together. A woman with a canvas tote strolled past and paused, eyeing the display. Tasha straightened a little, her smile gentle but inviting. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice calm and even. The woman smiled back. "These are lovely. Did you make them all yourself?" "Yes," Tasha replied. "Everything here is handmade." Maya stepped forward a little, holding up the blue necklace with both hands like an offering. The woman leaned in, curious, and just like that, the day began. Amidst the clamor and color of the market, Tasha and Maya stood beneath their small tent, souls woven together by love, struggle, and an unyielding thread of hope. It was not much, but it was theirs. The afternoon sun had climbed higher, turning gold against the pale blue of the sky. The market was now alive with movement, children tugging at their parents' sleeves, a young couple giggling over scented candles, and a man haggling passionately over a hand-carved bowl. The air was thicker with sound and smell, sizzling food from a nearby vendor, the low thrum of street music. Laughter caught in the breeze at the edge of this small, vibrant world. Claire appeared, her presence like a sudden chill slipping under a door. She walked with sharp purpose, her high heels tapping a clipped rhythm against the concrete like punctuation marks. Claire was in her mid-30s, her blonde hair in a sleek bob, her lips painted the precise shade of disdain. Her coat, a long camel-colored piece that swished elegantly around her knees, screamed designer, as did the gold hardware on her bag and the pristine white of her slacks. She held an iced coffee in one hand, the straw balanced lightly between her manicured fingers. Behind her trailed a friend, less finely dressed, more hesitant in her steps, but clearly orbiting Claire like a lesser moon around a brighter, colder planet. Claire's eyes drifted over the rows of vendor booths with a detached sort of disinterest, as if she were flipping through an outdated catalogue. Macrame wall hangings, hand-knit scarves, homemade soap, none of it seemed to register. Her gaze slid past bright colors and warm smiles with the same disdainful efficiency. Then she stopped. Tasha's booth was modest, the colors more muted than most, but it had a quiet dignity to it. The delicate jewelry shimmered gently in the sun, catching the light like whispers of starlight. Maya was crouched near the table, adjusting a display card that had tilted in the breeze. Tasha stood behind the table, calm and watchful, hands resting lightly on its edge. Claire tilted her head, one brow arching slightly. Her gaze traveled from the table to Tasha slowly, openly, appraising. She took in the cardigan, the jeans, the frayed shoes, her lips curled into something between amusement and pity. She turned slightly toward her friend and, with deliberate clarity, said, "Looks like someone's selling yard sale leftovers, or maybe just forgot to change clothes." The words were soft enough to feign innocence, but loud enough to slice cleanly through the air between them. Her friend let out a half-suppressed giggle, the kind that came more from discomfort than cruelty, but Claire didn't flinch. She sipped her iced coffee, eyes still on Tasha like a queen surveying a peasant. Tasha heard it. The words hit like a slap in an empty room, sudden and undeserved, but her expression didn't shift, not even a flinch. Her hands moved instead, slow, purposeful, as she reached for a silver bracelet and nudged it slightly into alignment. Her fingers were steady, her breath even. Maya looked up, the confusion etched across her young face like a shadow passing overhead. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. The tone, the look, the way the words had been shaped to hurt Mom. She asked quietly, voice catching. Tasha didn't look away from her display. She didn't give Claire the power of eye contact. "It's okay, baby," she said, her voice soft and sure, like a lullaby against a storm. "Some people forget their kindness at home." Maya stared up at her mother, at her calm, her grace, her strength, and blinked hard. A lesson was being taught here, quietly, without announcement, one Maya would carry with her long after the jewelry had been packed away. Claire had already moved on, heels clicking again, her laughter trailing faintly behind her like perfume. To her, it was over, a moment past, a fleeting swipe of superiority. But for Tasha, it was something else, not shame, not even anger, but a deep familiar ache, because this wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. She had grown used to being overlooked, misjudged, used to the way wealth cloaked cruelty in sarcasm, how people like Claire assumed worth was something you could see in a bank account or a handbag. But Tasha knew better. Her worth lived in the calluses on her fingers, in the patience of her touch, in the way Maya looked at her with open trust. Her wealth was measured in quiet endurance, in the beauty she poured into each bead, each clasp, each thread of wire. No sneer could strip that from her. She turned to Maya, crouched beside her again, and gently brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "You know what I see?" she asked, her voice still calm but firmer now, like stone beneath silk. Maya shook her head. I see a girl who helps me every day, who makes things with her hands and her heart, and who knows how to treat people better than they sometimes treat her." Maya's eyes searched her mother's face, and slowly, she nodded. Down the row, Claire disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by the sea of color and sound. Just another passerby, but at the quiet booth, with the black velvet table, something stronger remained. Not bitterness, not defeat, just resilience, and love. Always love. By mid-afternoon the artisan market had swelled with life. Sunlight burned brighter now, mellowing to a honey gold that kissed the tops of tents and made the jewelry on Tasha's table shimmer like treasure in a storybook. Laughter rippled through the breeze, mingling with the sound of distant drumming, birdsong, and the occasional bark of a dog on a leash. Tasha stood behind her booth, her shoulders finally relaxing as foot traffic picked up. The flow of curious customers had grown steady, no crowd, but enough to keep her busy. A young woman in a wide-brimmed straw hat and cropped denim jacket hovered at the front of the table, eyes scanning the rows of earrings, bracelets, and pendants. Her fingers brushed over a necklace, a wire-wrapped amethyst set in a copper twist. It was intricate but elegant, the kind of piece that whispered rather than shouted. "This looks familiar," the woman murmured, picking it up and holding it against her chest in the sunlight. "Didn't I see something like this in Elle or Vogue?" Tasha blinked, caught off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, another customer beside the woman leaned in. "Yeah," she chimed. "This kind of wearwork stones with that soft edge and antique metal. I saw it on a model last month. I think they called it modern earthcraft or something like that." Tasha's lips parted slightly, but still she said nothing. She wasn't sure how to answer. Her designs had always been her own, quietly developed, tested at night under the soft yellow glow of a desk lamp while Maya slept. She'd never submitted to magazines or influencers. She didn't even have the budget for promoted posts online. Now, the words Elle Vogue trending were hanging in the air above her humble table like flickering stars. Not far away, Claire stood stiffly at a booth adorned with oversized pastel artwork and minimalist prints. She had been browsing through the frames with a carefully disinterested eye, but at the sound of the conversation, her attention snapped toward Tasha's table. She didn't turn her full body, just shifted her head slightly, tilting it with the feline precision of someone trained to notice weakness or competition. Her brows furrowed. She stared at the necklace now dangling in the young woman's hands. The style was familiar, uncomfortably so. Claire's hand lowered from the art print she'd been pretending to examine. She stepped sideways, closer to the edge of Tasha's tent without fully entering it, as if afraid to breathe the same air. From this new angle, she could see more clearly. Another customer had just picked up a silver bracelet. It was fine, with an irregularly hammered surface, adorned with tiny freshwater pearls and a slim rectangular tag, no larger than a fingernail. The woman squinted at it, then raised her eyebrows in recognition. "Oh wow," she said aloud. "This tag, it says M Heart Studio. I've seen this brand before, haven't I? Isn't that the one that had that feature online? On something big?" Claire froze. The name struck her like ice water to the spine. M Heart Studio. Her mind reeled backward, flipping through glossy memories like pages of an old catalogue. That name had been on a proposal once, a sponsorship request, a fledgling brand looking for exposure, handcrafted jewelry. The tone had been modest, earnest. She remembered scoffing at it, tossing the envelope in the trash unopened. But later, weeks, maybe a few months, she'd seen the name again, briefly, just a whisper in the fashion circuit, a name tucked at the bottom of an editorial spread. One of those emerging artists to watch articles she rarely gave her full attention. Now, here it was, on a metal tag, hanging from the wrist of a stranger at the very market she had just insulted. The realization cracked. Something. Claire's expression shifted. The smirk that had lived on her lips since the morning softened into something else, something tighter, colder. Her eyes narrowed, trying to map the pieces together. Tasha M Heart Studio. Could it be her? She stepped forward now, just a pace, hesitating at the edge of the booth. Her eyes flicked to Tasha, who was smiling gently at the customers, answering their questions with quiet dignity. Claire stared, as if trying to peel back her skin to see the truth beneath this woman. The same one she had dismissed earlier as a nobody with yard sale scraps might have been the creator of pieces Claire herself had once bookmarked for trend forecasts, might have been the M Heart. Claire's hand tightened around the handle of her designer bag. She suddenly felt too warm in her coat. Back at the table, the first young woman was holding up the amethyst necklace, showing it to her friend. "I love it," she said. "It feels like something important, like it has a story." Tasha smiled. "It does. Every piece does." Claire swallowed, her throat dry. For the first time that day, she felt unsure of balance in a world she thought she'd always had a handle on, because the truth was surfacing in glittering fragments, and it was beginning to unsettle her. The name M. Hart wasn't just a brand, it had a face, and that face had been kneeling behind a table she'd sneered at, a woman in a faded cardigan, a mother, a maker, a quiet force she hadn't recognized, not yet, but she would. The sun had shifted lower in the sky now, tilting the light to a softer, amber glow. It cast long shadows across the artisan market and set the jewelry on Tasha's table ablaze with warmth, gold catching fire, silver glowing like moonlight. The crowd had begun to thin, drifting lazily as the afternoon gave way to evening. Tasha stood behind her booth, her posture quiet but grounded, like a tree rooted deep beneath the soil. She'd just finished wrapping up a sale for a mother, and her teenage daughter Maya had even convinced the girl to try on the amber drop earrings, and they suited her so well that her mother bought them without hesitation. Now, Tasha was straightening a velvet display stand when she noticed the figure standing a few paces away. Claire. Still immaculate, still poised. Something was different. Her coat no longer hung with the same careless confidence, and the angle of her jaw, once so sharp with certainty, seemed tight now, held in check. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she approached, but slower this time, almost cautiously. She stopped at the edge of the booth and offered a smile, a delicate thing, too controlled, too rehearsed. It didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excuse me," Claire said, voice smooth as silk drawn across a blade. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you connected to M. Hart's studio?" Tasha looked up slowly, her gaze rising with the calm of a tide that knows its rhythm. Her eyes met Claire's, not with hostility, not even pride, just steady, unflinching clarity. "Yes," she said, her voice low and warm. "I started it. I design every piece here." The words floated in the air between them, weightless and heavy all at once. Claire's face went still. For a moment, she didn't blink. I'm sorry." "What?" she stammered, the mask of composure slipping just slightly. You're Mariah Hart." Tasha gave a single, quiet nod. Claire's lips parted, but the words caught, somewhere between breath and disbelief. "You mean, you're the Mariah Hart? The one who did that limited capsule collection for the Reverence Gala last year? The one they featured in Styleform and Modern Looks?" "I am," Tasha said, folding her hands gently in front of her. "Though I stepped away from that world a while ago." Claire blinked. Twice, she felt the heat rising to her cheeks, the same way a fever sneaks in slow, uncontrollable. "But why? Why would you leave that?" she asked, her voice smaller now, no longer cutting. "You had press, exposure, influence. Why come back here? To this?" She gestured vaguely at the tent, the black velvet, the modest display. She didn't mean it cruelly, not this time, but the question hung in the air like a judgment anyway. Looked around the market, at the fading light warming the pavement, at Maya sitting cross-legged on the ground, sketching another pendant idea, at the old woman down the row, bartering jam for a painted bookmark. Then she looked back at Claire. "I wanted something more honest," she said, "more mine." The words weren't boastful, they weren't a rebuke, they were simple, whole, and true. Claire didn't speak. She didn't know how. Her mind was trying to make sense of this woman in front of her, the same woman she had ridiculed earlier in the day, reduced to a passing insult in front of a friend, dismissed like clutter on a sidewalk. And now, that woman stood here like something unshakable, a name with weight, a reputation she'd overlooked. "But you could have," Claire began, then faltered. "You could have made so much more money." "I could have," Tasha agreed, softly, "but it came with too many strings. Too many people trying to reshape my work to fit their brand, their story. I didn't want to be their voice. I wanted to be my own." Claire was quiet. A flock of birds scattered overhead, their wings slicing the amber sky. Somewhere in the distance, a musician strummed the opening notes of an old folk song. "I didn't recognize you," Claire murmured after a long moment. Earlier, I said things I shouldn't have." Tasha didn't flinch. "You're not the first. You won't be the last. But I wouldn't have said those things if I'd known who you were." Tasha tilted her head slightly. Her expression softened, cruel, not smug, just deeply honest. "That's the problem, though, isn't it?" she said gently. "You only saw worth once you saw a name." Claire swallowed hard, her throat thick. Shame crept in like a slow tide, pooling around her ankles before she realized how deep it already was. Tasha didn't wait for a response. She bent slightly and picked up a small bracelet from the edge of the tabola, simple strand of matte black stones, interspersed with small rose gold beads, and a charm engraved with the word truth. She held it out to Claire. "You don't have to buy anything," she said. "But if you wear this, remember where it came from, and maybe next time, you'll see people before you see labels." Claire hesitated, then reached out and took the bracelet with trembling fingers. She didn't speak. For once, she had nothing clever to say. She simply nodded, and as she turned to go, the sun dipped lower, casting long gold shadows that stretched across the market, where truth had revealed itself not with fire or thunder, but with stillness, grace, and the quiet power of a woman who never needed to raise her voice to be heard. Claire stood frozen, the simple bracelet hanging limply in her hand like a forgotten key. Around her, the world carried on the rustle of market tents in the breeze, the muffled rhythm of footsteps, the quiet murmur of vendors chatting with customers. But in her ears, everything felt muted, distant, like the hush that follows an unexpected blow. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice brittle with a forced laugh that barely escaped her lips. "I didn't realize." Tasha didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice or narrow her eyes. She simply looked at Claire, calm and unwavering. "You didn't have to realize anything," she said softly, her tone like silk folded over steel. "But maybe next time, you'll think twice before judging someone's worth by their clothes." The words struck Claire harder than she expected, because there was no venom in them, no triumphant cruelty, just truth, raw and unvarnished. She looked down at the bracelet again, her gaze flicking to the charm inscribed with truth, and suddenly it felt heavier. Her face flushed, her chest tightening with something more unfamiliar than embarrassment, shame. Beside Tasha, Maya reached up and slipped her hand into her mother's. She looked up with a quiet, radiant pride, her brown eyes full of admiration that shone like sunlight on calm water. Her little fingers squeezed once, like an anchor, like a thank you, like "I saw that. I saw you." Tasha smiled faintly and gave Maya's hand a small squeeze back, her eyes not leaving Claire's, and then, like a ribbon of fate pulled gently through the air, a voice interrupted them from just over Claire's shoulder. "Mariah, there you are." The market coordinator, an older man with graying curls and a clipboard tucked under one arm, strode up with the comfortable energy of someone who had walked this market for years. He beamed. "I've been looking for you. You know your booths. Drawing the biggest crowd again, right?" he said, gesturing toward the slowly forming semicircle of curious visitors around Tasha's table. "No surprise there. You always bring something special. Keep shining." Tasha chuckled, modest and warm. "Just doing what I love. You make this market better, Mariah. Always have," he added with a wink before striding off to his next task. Claire blinked, her world wobbling again. Mariah. Not just Tasha. Not just the woman in the faded cardigan. Mariah Hart, the name she'd glossed over in magazine spreads, the one she'd assumed was someone else, someone who didn't look like this. Someone with polished heels and a polished accent and a sleek studio with white walls and metal shelves. Someone like her, but that illusion had crumbled, and now Claire stood among its ruins, holding a bracelet she hadn't earned and a silence she didn't know how to fill. People were watching her now, not many, but enough. A couple of nearby vendors, a teen browsing rings who had noticed the tension, a woman who had been about to approach the table but now hung back, reading the air. Claire swallowed hard. Her pulse tapped a rhythm against her ribs. This wasn't the kind of attention she liked. Not admiration, not envy. This was accountability. She started again, but the words dried out in her throat. What was she supposed to say? That she didn't mean to insult Tasha, that it was a misunderstanding. But no, it hadn't been. She had meant it. She'd looked at a woman in worn sneakers and decided she wasn't worth kindness. She'd mocked her out loud, in front of her daughter, and now she saw the full shape of what she'd done. It wasn't just rude, it was wrong. "I really didn't see," Claire said finally, her voice thin. "I thought I knew what talent looked like. what success looked like, but I didn't see you. Tasha tilted her head slightly. Her eyes didn't glow with satisfaction, only honesty. Most people don't, she replied. Claire nodded slowly, her throat tight. She clutched the bracelet, still unsure if she deserved to keep it. I'm trying to be better, she said after a moment. I don't expect that to matter, but I am. Maya, still holding her mother's hand, gave Claire a small smile, not forgiving, not dismissing, just a quiet acknowledgement, like a flicker of sunlight between clouds. Tasha studied her for a moment longer. Then she nodded just once. Just enough. Trying as a start, she said. And somehow, that felt like grace. Claire stepped back, giving space. She lingered for a heartbeat longer, then turned and walked away, not fast, not flustered, just changed. The bracelet was still in her hand. Behind her, Maya looked up again. Mama. Yes, baby. Did you really do all that stuff? The magazines, the gala. Tasha knelt beside her, her knees creaking softly as she dropped to Maya's height. I did, she said, but it never felt as real as this. Making something with you beside me. Seeing people connect to it, right here. This is what matters. Maya beamed, her small chest rising proudly. I'm glad you're here, not with them. Tasha smiled and kissed her forehead. Me too. The sun dipped lower, casting a golden haze across the market. The buzz of voices returned. Another customer approached the booth, drawn by the shimmer and the story behind every piece. And as Tasha rose to greet them, the shadows behind her stretched long and quiet, carrying with them the weight of a lesson well learned, a lesson that somewhere down the market aisle Claire would carry, too. As the sun eased into the horizon, the market softened into something quieter, more golden. The energy that once bustled and clanged had mellowed into a hum of conversation, laughter, and the distant strumming of a guitar. Tents fluttered in, the evening breeze like tired sails, and lanterns began to glow under the canvas rooftops, stringing stars across the vendor rows. At the heart of it all, Tasha's booth still shone not with neon or garish displays, but with something quieter, deeper, a warmth that couldn't be packaged or replicated. Her velvet-lined table was nearly bare now, save for a few bracelets and one or two wire-wrapped pendants. People kept coming not just to browse, but to speak, to ask about her process, her story, her inspiration. Some came because they had overheard bits of the earlier conversation. Others had been drawn simply by the way she carried herself, calm, grounded, generous in a way that wasn't loud, but unmistakably powerful. One woman lingered with her husband, fingers hovering over a lapis pendant. This reminds me of my grandmother, she murmured. She used to wear something like this. I haven't thought about her in years. Tasha smiled gently. That stone brings strength, she said. The kind you carry, even when you forget it's there. The woman blinked, her eyes suddenly wet. She nodded, whispered thank you, and pressed the pendant to her chest like it held something sacred. Across the booth, Maya sat on a folding stool with a small sketchbook on her knees, legs swinging back and forth, the edge of her sneaker bumping the booth frame rhythmically. She was drawing again, this time a necklace shaped like a crescent moon, suspended on vines. She paused every now and then to glance at her mother, studying the way she talked, the way her fingers moved when she touched each piece. Maya was watching closely now, not just as a daughter, but as an apprentice. A teenage girl wandered over, maybe 13 or 14, clutching a phone and glancing at Tasha with shy admiration. She didn't say anything at first, just hovered, brows knitted. Then she whispered, "You're the woman from that post, right? The one who started her own studio?" Tasha nodded, amused. "I suppose I am." The girl's mouth twisted into a smile, small but genuine. "I want to be an artist too. People keep saying it's not practical, but I don't know. Seeing you here, it makes me think maybe I can." Tasha leaned in slightly. "It's not always easy, but it's real. If it's in you really, in youth, don't let anyone talk you out of it." The girl nodded, then darted off, cheeks flushed with something like hope. Behind the booth, the sky was turning lavender. Distant lights blinked on above rooftops. Crickets had begun their slow, patient chorus. From the far edge of the market, Claire lingered in the shadows. She hadn't left, not really. She hadn't approached again either. But every so often, she glanced toward the booth, bracelet still wrapped around her wrist, like a ribbon tied to memory. She had no words left. Today, only thoughts, regret, and maybe the early stirrings of growth. Back at the booth, Tasha packed the last items gently into a worn canvas bag. Maya helped, tucking display cards into a small crate while humming under her breath. The day was nearly done, but its meaning would stretch far beyond its final hour. As they zipped the last case closed, Tasha glanced out over the quieting market, her heart full not of pride, exactly, but of something deeper, something solid. She hadn't planned on making a statement today. She hadn't wanted confrontation or recognition. She had simply come to share what she made with love, as she always had. But somehow, through that act of quiet authenticity, a truth had been spoken. A voice began to narrate, soft and clear, not belonging to anyone in the scene, but echoing like wind through leaves, like wisdom passed from one soul to another. True elegance isn't worn, it's lived, and dignity, it doesn't need designer tags to be seen. It walks softly, speaks gently, and leaves a mark without ever demanding attention. Sometimes, the most brilliant people shine from the most unexpected places. You might find them in old sneakers, behind modest tables, shaping the world with humble hands and steady hearts. Don't miss their light, because you're blinded by judgment. Tasha turned to Maya and offered her a hand, ready to go home. Maya stood, slipping her small hand into her mother's. "Yay," she said with a yawn. "But next week, I want to sell my moon necklace." Tasha grinned. "Then we'd better make it together." They walked through the thinning crowd, their silhouettes framed by the last spill of golden light, and as the market faded behind them, one thing remained clear: the light we carry, the truth we live, shines brightest not when it's loud, but when it's real.